Welcome back. Today we're looking at Minimalista by Alfonso Borello, a second edition manuscript that's basically a demolition guide for modern life. It blends minimalism, stoicism, and a digital detox. We've read it, so let's get right into the assessment.
Okay, so I've been sitting with this for a while, and the first thing that really jumps out, I think it's the most glaring issue, is the voice of the piece.
The voice?
Yeah, the manuscript's aggressive, very militaristic language feels like it's constantly undermining its own stated goal, which is about finding silence and wisdom.
That's a strong start. I mean, I know from his notes the author wants to get the reader to a place of, what does he call it, structural integrity.
And that theta state.
Right, that deep relaxation state. But you're saying the map he's drawn to get there is a bit too loud?
It's not just loud, it's violent. There's this huge disconnect between the destination, peace, clarity, a sanctuary, and the vehicle, which feels like an armored truck. We're seeing words like kinetic weapon, kill zone, tactical disarmament, and shackle on, almost every page.
He even says it in the note on the second edition, doesn't he? This edition is a strike.
Exactly. A strike?
Okay, but let me just play devil's advocate for a second here. Modern life is an assault, right? The noise, the notifications, the clutter he talks about.
It is.
So maybe he's using that kinetic language because he thinks a softer approach just won't cut through. Maybe the reader needs to be shaken.
And I think that is absolutely the intention, to wake the reader up. But here's the risk.
Okay.
By focusing so much on demolition and strikes, the text might actually be causing the very stress it wants the reader to escape.
You're being shouted at to relax.
You're being shouted at to relax. If I'm reading a book to find a sanctuary, and it tells me I'm walking into a kill zone, my nervous system doesn't relax, it braces for impact.
That's a really good point. The language is triggering biological stress when the goal is biological calm. So where does this show up the most for you?
Phase I, the internal reset. It's the biggest offender. He talks about taking a 30-minute silence during an argument. The advice itself is sound.
Right, let the chemicals die down.
Exactly. But he calls that 30-minute window a kill zone, where reality is waiting for you to make a mistake. It frames a moment of calm restraint as this high-stakes standoff.
So the theme is basically that life is a siege. To fix this, then, we need to recalibrate the metaphors, right? To bridge that gap between demolition and sanctuary.
Yes.
You can't just take the edge away, because that's the brand, but we have to shift the framing.
Precisely.
We don't want to lose the intensity, but maybe shift the type of intensity. So instead of a kill zone or a trap, what if that 30-minute window is framed as a decompression chamber?
A decompression chamber. I like that.
The action's the same. Silence, waiting, pressure regulation, but the metaphor shifts from war to engineering. It fits so much better with his later ideas of architecture and source code.
It suggests control and design, not a desperate fight.
It evolves the tone. And speaking of tone, there's another section in Phase 2 about the apology that felt really icy to me. Oh, the tactical disarmament section.
Yes.
Where he calls apologizing when you're right a form of tactical disarmament to, suppress the ego.
It sounds so manipulative, Machiavellian.
It is. It implies human connection is just this zero-sum game you have to win. If I apologize just to disarm you, I'm not sorry. I'm just maneuvering.
And that totally contradicts the authenticity he promises later in Phase 5. You're just becoming a quieter manipulator.
That's the tonal dissonance. It undermines the whole philosophy. So the suggestion is to soften it, align it with authenticity.
So frame the apology not as a way to win.
Right, but as a way to clear the static for both people. It's about signal clarity, not battlefield dominance. A small shift in words, but a huge shift in the reader's posture. Okay, that's a perfect pivot point. Moving from the feeling of the text to the mechanics of reading it. I want to talk about the syntax.
The staccato.
Yes. The deliberate use of that staccato syntax, all the fragmented sentences, it creates real reader fatigue. And I think it actually hurts his more complex arguments.
This is that same core conflict again, isn't it? The tools don't match the job. Just like kill zones create anxiety, this writing style creates a kind of cognitive stress.
He's very open about it. He writes, "What survives is the dark rhythm, staccato, precise."
Right, but keeping that beat up for the whole book just flattens everything out. You get pages of, the ink is wet, burn the set, cut the line.
It's rhythmic, yeah, but it starts to feel like you're just scrolling through slogans on Twitter.
Exactly. It completely prevents the deep work reading experience that he actually advocates for in his own reading list. If every sentence is a jab, the reader just goes numb after a while.
But again, let me push back a little. He's trying to cut through self-help fluff. He wants to be direct. Isn't that brevity a strength?
Brevity is a strength, but monotony is a weakness. The problem isn't that the sentences are short, it's that all of them are. It severs the connection between an idea and its conclusion. A perfect example is the culinary break in Phase 3. The instructions are so choppy. Use your hands. This is tactile. Forget the mixer. It reads like a telegraph.
I actually laughed at that part. I love making pasta. It's this messy, slow process. You feel the gluten stretch.
Yes.
But reading this, it feels like a drill sergeant is barking at me while I'm trying to make dinner. Knead dough. Stop. Use hands. Stop.
That is exactly the issue. He wants us to feel the meditative quality of cooking, but the prose is rushing us. So the suggestion here is use the staccato style for the commands, the protocols.
The hard rules.
Right. But then allow for more lyrical, fluid prose when you explain the why or the result.
So describing the dough should sound like the dough feels?
Yes. Describe the feeling of the flour and water coming together. Let the sentence lengthen and stretch just like the gluten does. If he smooths that narrative out, it would actually support his whole point. Right now, the writing style reinforces the very speed he's trying to kill.
There's another place that happens, the on-clutter section, with that story about the man with the gigantic desk.
And the garlic on the wall.
Such a weird specific image. I loved it.
It's the strongest visual in the whole first half, but the text just rushes through it. Garlic is organic. It has texture. It has scent. It's breathless.
Yeah.
So the feedback is just, let this story breathe. Connect that garlic is organic observation into a longer, more flowing paragraph. Contrast it with the dead matter of plastic. Chopping it up like that, you lose the whole elegant, organic metaphor.
So vary the rhythm. Keep the reader from feeling battered by periods.
Exactly.
Okay, let's move on to the intellectual core. Because there's a really jarring contradiction between how the text dismisses formal education and experts, and its simultaneous demand for this high-culture intellectualism.
This is a tricky one. This is where I feel he trips over his own feet. He makes a really strong case for independent thinking, that whole Ronin mindset.
Right.
Phase 4 tells readers to bypass the cave of education. He mocks consultants and pundits. He calls history questionable.
Standard counterculture stuff. Don't trust the suits.
Totally. But then you flip to the reading list, and he's demanding that you read Leonardo da Vinci, Antonio Gramsci's political theory, linear algebra. He wants you to learn new languages to avoid rust.
It feels a little elitist, doesn't it? To dismiss the Department of Education, but then tell people to read Gramsci's prison notebooks, which is incredibly dense theory.
It is.
It's like he's saying, don't listen to experts, but also, here's my list of experts you have to study.
He's trying to be anti-establishment and highbrow at the same time, without connecting the two. Ignore the dogs howling, but go read complex political theory.
So what's the fix?
The suggestion is to nuance the definition of authority. He needs to draw a really bright line between bureaucratic credentials, the piece of paper, and true mastery, the 10,000 hours.
So not dismissing experts, just dismissing hollow credentials.
Exactly. In Phase 4, that on education section, he should just acknowledge that Da Vinci and Gramsci were experts. They weren't just random guys.
Right. They were deeply studied.
Right. So frame the input protocols not as ignoring all experts, but as curating timeless mentors over current trend chasers.
And that clarification would really help the part on linear algebra in Phase 1. When I read that, I just thought, why is the guy who hates school telling me to do math homework?
That is the perfect example of where he just needs to explain it a little more. He says, structure is good for the brain, like algebra, but structure is bad for the resume. It's confusing.
He needs to connect the dots.
He needs to explain why these formal structures sharpen the blade, while the Department of Education is bad.
So it's the difference between the gym and the office. Linear algebra is mental weightlifting. Bureaucratic education is just compliance.
Precisely. And if he makes that connection explicit, that abstract structure builds mental resilience, while bureaucratic structure builds dependency. The whole contradiction just vanishes.
Okay, that clarifies the intellectual stance a lot. It turns it from a rant into a position. Finally, let's look at the implementation.
The how gap.
The how gap? The manuscript jumps between these hyper-specific instructions and then these really vague philosophical commands. It leaves you kind of unsure how to actually implement the source code.
Yeah, some sections are so detailed. The vodka pasta recipe, the 30-minute rule, they're precise. But then you get to the most important part, phase 5, the source code. And it's all abstractions. Rewrite the source. Angels will come down. The heart is the user.
It gets a little floaty at the end, for sure. It makes a strong case for a spiritual reset, but the instructions just kind of fade into this divine and network language that feels disconnected from the stone tools he promised in the prologue.
That's the weakness. The end of the book just floats away. The suggestion is to ground all that spiritual advice from phase 5 in the same physical reality he used in phase 2. The room, the garlic, the linen. Make the spiritual physical.
I remember that daily examination log from phase 1. It seemed really important, but then it just disappears.
Such a missed opportunity. Bring it back in phase 5. Show the reader how to rewrite the source code using that log.
Oh, that's good.
Don't just say rewrite it. Say open the log from Tuesday, find the glitch you wrote down, and physically write the new line of code right next to it. Make it an action.
And what about that commercial break loop? The text says angels will come down. It's a beautiful image, but it's kind of hard to do on a Tuesday morning.
Angels is poetic, not practical. We need a concrete practice. He briefly mentions this Stoic idea of insulting a stone.
Insulting a stone, what is that?
It's this brilliant Stoic exercise in indifference. You yell at a rock, the rock doesn't care. It teaches you that external noise doesn't require an internal reaction.
Wow.
But he just buries it. Pull that out. Make it a specific morning ritual in phase V. Don't say be spiritual. Say go find a stone and practice indifference. That fits right alongside the linear algebra.
I see. And you could do the same with the tiny mirror from phase 2, the one for deflecting spirits.
Yes. Connect that tiny mirror to the internal citadel of Marcus Aurelius from the reading list. Make the spiritual protection physical. Tell the reader, when you walk past that mirror, recite the maxim from Aurelius.
So the abstract concept gets a physical trigger in the real world.
And that's how you close the gap.
Okay, we've covered a lot. I think this is a solid renovation plan. Let's recap the main points.
Let's do it.
First, the tone. Soften the militaristic language. Shift from kill zones to decompression chambers to align the metaphors with the goal of peace. You can't scream at someone to meditate.
Second, the structure. Break up that relentless staccato rhythm. It's great for commands, but it's exhausting for storytelling. Let the garlic story breathe. Let the pasta dough stretch.
Third, the logic. Reconcile the stats on experts versus high culture. Distinguish between empty credentials and true mastery so the reader gets why they should read Da Vinci but ignore the bureaucracy.
And finally, the how. Ground that abstract source code in concrete actions. Bring the mirrors, the logs, the rituals, and the stones into that final phase, so the spirituality feels just as real and actionable as the vodka pasta recipe.
That sums it up perfectly. The raw materials here are they're so strong. The garlic, the mirrors, the pasta, the dark rhythm, it's all there. But the architecture needs some renovation.
Absolutely. The foundation is solid. Just need to shift some walls to let the light in.
To our listener, Alfonso, we invite you to turn the page, make these edits, and please submit the 3rd edition for a final review. We would love to see how this evolves.
We really would.
That's it for this critique. We'll see you next time.